Imagine this for a second. A law that affects pretty much everyone's finances gets passed, and nobody, not one single person gets to debate it. Well, that's not a what-if scenario. It's exactly what happened in 2025 with a huge overhaul of the income tax system.
So let's set the scene. It's August 11th, 2025, and a massive new income tax law officially goes into effect. And just so we're clear, this wasn't some minor tweak. We're talking a fundamental rewrite of the rules that impacts millions of taxpayers.
But here's the wild part, the real twist in the story. This incredibly important law was passed in the Lok Sabha, India's lower house of parliament, without any debate at all. None. Just like that, the tax rules for the entire country were changed in the middle of chaos.
Which, of course, leads you to the big question. With all that commotion going on, what's actually in this new law? To really get what this law is all about, you first have to understand how it even became a law. Or, in this case, how it managed to get pushed through with no one really discussing it.
The timeline here tells you everything you need to know. A bill gets introduced in February, it goes to a committee for review over the summer, standard procedure. But then, things just go into hyperdrive. On August 8th, the government pulls that first version. And then, just 3 days later, a totally revised bill isn't just introduced, it's passed. For a law this big, that kind of turnaround is pretty much unheard of.
And here's the real kicker. Those loud protests you heard about in Parliament that day, they had nothing to do with this tax bill. The opposition was actually furious about something completely different, changes to electoral rules. So this massive financial law basically slipped right through while everyone was shouting about something else.
Okay, so that's how it happened. But now for the what. What really changed? This is where you see the difference between the big promise and the tiny fine print. The official line, the big selling point from the government, was all about one thing: simplification. The idea was to take our famously complex tax code and make it way, way easier for everyone, from the average person to the tax pros, to actually understand. And, if you just look at the numbers, it seems pretty convincing. The total word count was cut almost in half. The number of sections got chopped down from over 800 to just over 500. This was basically Exhibit A in the case for simplification. But it wasn't just about deleting stuff. They also wanted to make the law more usable. So instead of just long, dense paragraphs, the new law uses way more tables, tripling them from 18 to 57. And to make the math clearer, they added a whole bunch of new formulas, jumping from only 6 to 46. The whole thing was redesigned to be more like a practical guide.
A shorter, clearer law with easy-to-read tables. I mean, that sounds great, right? Who wouldn't want that? But what else was hidden inside those neatly organized pages? This is where that nice, simple story takes a very sharp turn.
Because tucked away in this simpler law was a huge expansion of power for tax officials. The new rules literally gave them the authority to demand the keys to your entire digital kingdom. We're talking the power to go through your personal emails, read your private messages, and even look at your social media. This is a massive leap from looking at financial records to getting into deeply personal spaces. Now, you can't just introduce a power-up that big without someone pushing back. And while there wasn't a big public debate on the floor, there was absolutely formal written opposition. And it all revolved around one core idea, that this was a direct attack on privacy. So, yeah, while there wasn't a debate in the main chamber, that doesn't mean everyone was quiet. 2 MPs, Amar Singh and N.K. Premachandran, they went on the record. They filed what are called official dissent notes with the committee reviewing the bill. It's basically their way of saying, we object, for the history books. And they did not pull any punches. I mean, this quote from their official note gets right to the point. They called these new powers a grave violation of the fundamental right to privacy. You can't get much more direct than that. Their whole argument really boiled down to 3 key things. First, obviously, that it violates the fundamental right to privacy. Second, that giving anyone this much power creates a huge risk that it's going to be abused. And finally, they argued it wasn't even necessary, that the old 1961 law already gave officials all the power they really needed to do their jobs. So when you put all this together, the simplification, the surveillance, the dissent, you're left with a classic debate.
This is the final trade-off we always face: enforcement versus liberty. And it leaves us with two totally competing stories. The case for the law is all about catching up to the modern world. It gives authorities the tools they need to find tax evasion that's hidden in digital data, all inside a law that's supposedly easier to follow. But the argument against it is all about the price of that power. It's seen as a dangerous expansion of government snooping into our personal lives, and what's worse, it was all pushed through without proper democratic debate.
So, there you have it. The simplification on one side and the surveillance that came along for the ride on the other. That's the core trade-off, right there. And it all forces us to ask a really fundamental question, especially today. Where exactly do we draw the line between catching cheaters and invading someone's life? This law drew a brand new line. The real debate is whether it was drawn in the right place.